Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are doing absolutely well. So guys, in today's video we are going to see another lifecycle method, which is componentDidMount Lifecycle method. So till the previous video we have covered two lifecycle methods already. The first one was constructor lifecycle method and the second one was render lifecycle method. These both were under mounting phase, and this third lifecycle method that we are seeing is also coming under the mounting phase of the React lifecycle. So first of all, let's discuss what are the points that we are going to discuss in this video. So in this video, we will basically first of all see what is this componentDidMount lifecycle method. Then we are going to see how many times basically it run during our program execution, and we will see what is the importance of this, and finally we are going to have an interview question based on this. So let's start. But before starting, I just want to let you know that if you want to access the code which I am doing in this video, you can go to my GitHub repository, React tutorial, and there you have to go to the commits section, and when you will click on this button, browse the repository. At this point in the history, you can go to the specific file and you can take the code. Basically, most of the times I do the code in app.js, so you can go to that file and have the code of that file. So now we can start. So first of all, let us understand what is this method, that is componentDidMount Lifecycle method. So as the name suggests, the componentDidMount method is invoked after all the elements of the page had been rendered correctly, also known as after the first render cycle. So it is said like component did mount. So component had already mount and then this is running. Okay. So mounting has already happened of the component. So at that time, this method is getting invoked. So as the name suggests, componentDidMount method is invoked after all the elements of the page have been rendered correctly. When a React component is created and inserted into the DOM, componentDidMount is the method that gets triggered immediately afterwards. So as soon as the component is created and it is inserted in our UI or the DOM, so this method is the one which gets triggered immediately after that. So this is where the magic happens. It's your opportunity to perform actions that require interactions with the DOM or any initial setup that your component may need. So now let us see that we have already seen that in the mounting phase, there are three lifecycle methods: constructor, render, and componentDidMount. So now let us see the order in which they get executed. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a code example. I'm going to create a basic class-based component, because we know that all these lifecycle methods that we are looking at now are being used in class-based components only, because for function-based components, we have React hooks. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all remove this default content and write something like component did mount lifecycle method. Okay, so component did mount lifecycle method. Now we are going to see on our browser screen whether it is looking fine. So you can see we have our heading. Now what we need to do, we have to check the order of execution of all these three components, that which all these three lifecycle methods, which runs the first and which runs after that. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a constructor method first of all, and inside the constructor we know that we have to create a super method. So super method is also created, and now I'm going to write a console statement. In the similar way, I'm going to write the console statements in three of the lifecycle methods, so that we can see in our console that which lifecycle method is running after which one. So constructor I have written. Now what I will do, I will write the same statement under render also, and in the similar way I am going to create one more, that is componentDidMount lifecycle method, and in the similar way I am going to write a console statement here even. Once this is done, I'm going to just write the same thing here. Okay, so this is done. When now I'm saving it, and once we will go to our browser window, I'm going to open my console side by side, and I'm going to remove basically everything. So you can see right now we have constructor componentDidMount. Maybe I have not updated the statement, so here we need to write render instead of, because this console is running inside the render lifecycle method. Now we will see. So I'll remove everything and I'm going to refresh it. Maybe I'm not saved the file. Okay, I'm going to remove and refresh everything. So you can see, first of all, our constructor lifecycle method is running, then render, and then component did mount. So it is very clear the order in which they are executing. First of all, we have already seen in the first video that constructor lifecycle method is the one which is running at the initial stage, and then inside the render method we have our states and props value getting set in based on that it is running. And then the third which we have seen is whenever our component is ready and it is mounted, basically at that time component did mount lifecycle method runs. So we know the order now. Now let us see one more thing, that we know that render lifecycle method runs every time whenever the prop value is changed or a state is set, right? We have seen this in this video. So let us see whether component did mount component did mount lifecycle method also runs the same way, like multiple times. So for that what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to create a state. Okay, so I'm going to create a state, this dot state, and I'm going to write greet. In the similar way, I'm going to write good morning, and here now in the render I'm going to create a button, so which will say update greeting, and on the on click I'm going to set the new value for this one. So on click, this dot set state, and now what we are going to do is we are going to set the greet value to good evening maybe. So basically we are seeing that whether component did mount lifecycle method also runs multiple times in the similar way render lifecycle method runs. So we are checking that. So for that I have taken this example that I am setting the state value first and then I'm changing it based on the button click. So now what we are going to do, I'm basically going to remove this console statement because we don't need this, and I am going to have this statement on my browser window. So that is in the H2 I'm going to write this dot greet, this dot state dot greet basically. So whatever the value that is changing, at least we can see that on the screen. Okay, and after that we will have this two console statements as it is, so that we will get to know whether these lifecycle methods are running again and again or not. So for this what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my browser window and I'm going to remove everything as of now. Let us refresh it initially and we will see what all the things that are running. So first of all, one time render lifecycle method is running and one time component did mount is running. Now you can see the initial message that we have, that is good morning, and as soon as I click on update greeting it will change to good evening, and you can see only render lifecycle method has run and component did mount has not run. So whenever I now click on update greeting, the render lifecycle method will always run again and again. Why? Because we are setting the value of our state. Anyway, we are not even changing on every click, but anyway the value is getting set as soon as we click on this button. That is why you can see render method being called every time, but component did mount is only called once when the component was ready and mounted on the UI. So I hope now you have got the understanding. Now let's get back to our slides and let us see what all are the important points to cover about this. So we have seen that how many times does component did mount run. So React components call component did mount only once by default. Okay. So next is why APIs are called in component did mount. So usually API calls and other things are happen inside this lifecycle method like component did mount. So what is the reason behind that? So the reason for this is it is not a syntax error to invoke APIs inside the constructor or component will mount lifecycle methods, but it will increase code complexity and hampers the performance of it. As a result, to avoid unnecessary re-rendering and code complexity, the API should be called after the render method that is in component did mount. So like there is no hard and fast rule that you have to call it inside the component did mount method only, but it is always suggestible that you should call it after the render method, and the lifecycle method that comes after render method is component did mount. So that is why we call it inside this one. I hope now you have got the understanding of this one also. Now moving on to the next one, why is component did mount important? What is the importance of this method? So component did mount is the final step of the mounting process. Using the component did mount method, we can execute the React code when the component has already been placed in the DOM. It is used for handling all network requests and setting up subscription and even setting up the API, external APIs. Okay, so all of these things are happening inside the component did mount method. So you have understand the importance of this method. Now let's take the interview question. So is component did lifecycle method, component did mount lifecycle method same as use effect? So you might have not heard use effect as of now because we have not covered the functional components hooks till now, but in the upcoming videos we are going to see. But I just want to let you know that this is an important interview question. So the answer for this is yes, use effect hooks is used in functional components which behave like component did mount if you pass blank array as the second argument. So I told you, right, that these lifecycle methods that we are looking at now are only used in class based components, and for functional based components we have something called as React hooks. So the like the equivalent React hook used in place of this component did mount lifecycle method is use effect, and in the upcoming video we are even going to see how this use effect works and how do we use it inside our functional components. So I hope now you have got the understanding of everything that we have discussed about the component did mount lifecycle method. And just in case if you have any doubt, let me know in the comment section. And if you found the video helpful, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done yet. Thanks for watching the video, and I will see you in next video.